Hello there, TJ Dinzer here, Senior News Editor for Shacknews.com. And this week, we are just coming off of EVO 2025. Myself, Will Borger, and Ozzy Mejia, we're all out there and doing coverage, enjoying the show, playing some games, and we're going to discuss what we liked and didn't like about it. We did this last year with EVO 2024, Will and I did, and Ozzy gets to join us this time, which is fitting because he's part of Shack News as well.
And I will say I've been doing this going to EVO for about 10 years now, and we were talking about this on Saturday, but this is probably like one of my favorite EVOs that I've done. Like, I went into Friday thinking, like, do I want to keep doing this? Like, am I just over the whole thing? Like, do I kind of just want to like just leave it in your hands, in your capable hands next year? And by the time I left, I'm just like, I'm ready to do the whole 3 days next year.
EVO over the course of the last maybe 3 years ago has been undergoing a massive evolution. We moved away from...
No pun intended.
Yeah. We moved away from the Mandalay Bay, which came with some growing pains, some good things, some bad things, and some things that they've smoothed out between like years as they've... This is the second year that they've done the convention center. And so I kind of like to start by like opening it up to conversation about like, how did you guys feel about like this year as far as what you experienced in the previous years? And Will, why don't you start us off?
Sure, yeah. I really, really liked what they did to the show floor this year. I thought putting Artist Alley right where you come in was really great, because basically you walk in, there's the Artist Alley there, and if you turn left, you've got all the setups for competition. And then between the two, you've kind of got the EVO arcade. So it made it very easy to tell where you were at any given moment. Like if you wanted to be like, oh, I'm at my pool, I want to run to the alley real quick. Like I know I have to go over there. And the last couple of years, it was kind of like, sometimes like things were in weird places. This year it was very much like, all right, stuff, and then competition was all to the left, including the finals arena. So if you knew like, hey, I don't know exactly where everything is, but if you knew I go left, I get to competition, it made it really easy to figure out where stuff was, made it really easy to get around. There was a lot more space on the floor. It didn't feel cramped like it has in years past in some cases. I thought just the way that they set it up was really, really good. And I think from a like just organization of the floor and where you could be and where everything was standpoint, it was the best that it's been since I've been going, for sure.
This is something that I've come to love about having EVO in the West Hall of the Las Vegas Convention Center. And, you know, for those that haven't gone, like, this isn't the first time that EVO's been at the convention center, but the West Hall is a relatively new addition to that area. Like, it used to be like in the South Hall, and back then, like Will noted, it felt pretty cramped. It was a little hard to get around sometimes. But after a year of kind of getting used to it last year, they kind of nailed down the layout this time around. Like, now everything feels open. You know where everything is. I never felt claustrophobic at all. And that's normally like something that happens to me frequently at conventions, is there's that feeling of like, you know, you got to get out and find an open space or else, you're going to panic. But I never felt that at any point at EVO. And I love the way that the layout looks this year. I love the way that I think it's going to look going forward. And they've just got such a groove in terms of like what's what in terms of where you can be entertained, where you can watch the competition, where you can compete, where you can eat even. Like, they actually have a lot more eating options than were available in years past. Like, in the past years, like, you were lucky if you were able to get a hot dog, and now it's just like, you have options. And I'm not just talking about options that include the Chipotle bus, which that's a cool idea. I mean, I don't know if it's going to stick around, but like, if you can either take the Chipotle bus or you can find like a couple of options out in the arena. And I really like how that's all laid out.
Yeah, one of the things that I really enjoyed was when on finals day, like, I did not have to leave the arena to get food. And I know there were food options last year, but it was very long lines and there was only a couple places. This year I was like, I want to get some popcorn. And so I just went over and I got some popcorn and I came back, and the whole thing took me maybe 3 minutes during the finals. So all that additional stuff of just not being able to leave the floor and get some decent food if you want. There's also the food court, that's right outside. Like, and then there's stuff like the Chipotle bus. Like, it felt a lot easier to just, I want to stay at EVO the whole day and plan around that, as opposed to last year where it was like, all right, we need some food. Like, who is running to tacos? Oh, go with me, right?
So last year, one of the things that happened that I think really kind of was less than ideal is that they cut off a portion of the hall that was like used for tournament setups this year in order to make a finals arena that was inside of West Hall. And as a result, we ended up being more cramped. We ended up being like, it was tougher to get between TO tables. The exhibitor floor was like more packed together, and as a result, the lines like filled lanes, and it was hard to get through. So agreed on all fronts. That was the giving the whole hall to the tournament floor and exhibitor floor was so much better for getting around. It was like more distance to walk, but I wasn't like ever pushed into a sardine can space where I felt like I needed to push through people to get around. And I felt less stressed as a result, less stressed and less anxious as I made my way through those 3 days as a result.
And this isn't because it was a lower turnout. Like there were people there, and like there were the registration numbers for like all of the games were just like practically through the roof. So like this isn't a case of like, oh, the turnout's lower than it was last year. No, that's not the case at all.
I think the registration numbers were slightly lower, but like the crowd numbers were pretty much the same. It was not something where you felt that you needed additional space for sure.
To sort of lean into that a bit, talking about the content of EVO, like let's step a bit into the stuff that was on the floor, like the exhibitors on the floor, the content that was on the floor, the games, the new features. How did you feel about the slate of like stuff to check out at EVO this year?
I thought it was really good. You know, Marvel Tocom was there, which I got to play. That game feels phenomenal. Twix KO is still there. There was MK booth. There was the booth from Atari for the new collection. There was
Invincible.
Yeah, Invincible was there. Yes, of course. I played that. I can't imagine why it didn't come to me. There was a ton of stuff to do, especially if you were just like a regular attendee, which was something I really appreciated, right? Like there were, you know, they had those times where they would have like the commentators come out and like play little games with the audience, right? Like we're going to do a quiz game, like come out and do this with us, or, you know, special events. I think Harada was at the Tekken booth for a while, just taking pictures with people. There was a lot to do if you just wandered the floor. And sometimes it feels like if you're not like at a pool or not in the arena, you're like, okay, what do I do? But one of the cool things I thought was, you know, this year the arena was open during the finals. And I was really surprised how busy it was during the finals, right? Because there were people who I don't think went into the finals arena at all. And they were just on the floor, like playing casuals or going through Artist Alley or using the arcade or lining up for Tokon or Tekken or whatever, right? And they were just having a blast. And I thought that was really, really cool. And so it feels like that's the way to go in the future, to just let people have the floor on Sundays and use the floor. And I mean, I was surprised. Like I tried to go back and play more Tokon, but the line was so long, even on Sunday during the finals, that I was just like, wow, you know, people are really getting the most out of this.
You know, there was that stretch where EVO was holding Sunday finals at the Mandalay Bay Arena. And that's one of those things where like, it felt like a real sports presentation. And there hasn't been a feeling like that since, but like, I think last year it was EVO kind of dealing with the shell shock of we don't have that anymore. We're kind of back to being a gaming event. And this year it was, why is that a bad thing? Why not lean into it more? Like, and the way they've leaned into it, I think they've made it a better event as a result. You don't have to be a real sports presentation. You can just embrace being a video game, and your event's going to be so much better because of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a whole bunch of feelings about the finals arena and everything about it, but I do agree that like having the floor to be able to fiddle with, as far as like like when the Fatal Fury City of the Wolves finals were running, Will and I just sat down and played a 29 game set of Guilty Gear Strive, and it was nice to just be able to do that on a whim because we felt like it. And like that casual vibe there is also like part of what makes it. They also expanded the casual like setups on the other side of the arena, which were over by Artist Alley, which I also think is a great idea, because when you walk in the main doors, you see it right there in front of you, just like all these tables set up just for the sake of casuals. And the arcade was expanded with more games. Like the museums were expanded. They did more art, and they did Mark Julio did a sneaker collection, like a sneaker pairing with the fighting game art this year, which was pretty dope. I always love seeing that history in that museum, just like the art from the very first Street Fighters and Fatal Furies all the way up to what we have today. The Fighting Stick Museum was pretty dope. And yeah, if you saw my shorts video of the Marvel Tokon line, where I started at the front of it and then walked all the way to the back, that was the experience for all 3 days. That game was hot, and it was worth it to check in on that, because it was
the hottest game there by a lot. And I think I said this on Friday. I said, like, the line for Invincible is long, but the line for Marvel Tokon is massive. Like, it blew it out of the water. And good luck playing that game if you got there even a little bit late on any of the 3 days.
So one of the things I thought was funny was how much excitement there was for the pre-release stuff. Obviously, like there's excitement for the pre-release stuff every year, but this year it felt especially apparent with how long, like the lines never stopped, either for Invincible or for Tukon, or even like 2XKO had a pretty consistent line, right? And I think one of the things that they've really embraced that has made it better to just be on the floor is like, hey, even if you are not looking to play those games, they're always doing like an exhibition or they're having people come out and talk about them. They're doing interviews on the stages, which I really appreciated this year. There was so many more interviews throughout the event where you could just sit and be like, I want to listen to Seth Killian interview Arslan Ash. Like that's a thing that's going to happen, right? It was easy to find. It wasn't like shoved in a room. It was up front. You could just sit down. And I think even the games that were side games this year, I think the way that those were placed and the way that like they were more highlighted in terms of where the convention was made it easy. So you could be like, oh, I want to go find like Xrd. I watched the Xrd top 8. And I was like, oh, this is great, and it was easy to find, and there was a lot of people doing that. So I think the way that they've come out and made it so like everything gets a space on the floor, everything gets like a little moment, and it's really easy to find it if you just know that it's there and you don't know where, is awesome.
I think that this was a really, really important show for Invincible Versus, because I will admit, and I know a lot of people who are like me, I came into EVO not thinking much of that game. I wasn't impressed by the trailers. I wasn't blown away by
despite what Will and I tried to tell you.
Like, I wasn't blown away by the trailers and the look of the game up to that point. But once you put your hands on a controller and actually fiddle with Invincible Versus, it clicks almost immediately. It feels good. And I think that having that tactile experience at EVO 2025 was real important for that game, because I know I'm not alone in how I felt about just the trailers of it.
Yeah, it's a weird game because like it doesn't feel as fast as it is in the trailers, like when you're watching it, and it doesn't feel like you're making as many decisions as you are, again, when you're watching it being played. And when you sit down with it, you're like, oh no, this is very fast, this is very fluid actually, and it works the way that you expect it to work. I'd gotten to play it before this EVO at the very, very first like preview event they did a few months ago, and I was impressed by how much better it felt between now and then. Like there was a massive, just in terms of feels way better than when I first got to play it. And having the 2 new characters, and is it weird to say that like even though there is a Marvel fighting game, I think the game that feels like the most like Marvel versus Capcom is actually Invincible Versus of the tag fighters that were there.
See, the comparison I kept making to it and have been making to it is Dragon Ball Fighters, because that's what it feels like in terms of presentation. But like if you compare it speed wise, like it's gonna be a little bit slower, obviously, but for what it is, it's incredible, and it feels just so good with that whole Killer Instinct auto combo system, where like if you haven't learned everything, you can just at worst do like just button mash your way into like a really cool tag combo, like stuff like that. Like they know what they're doing on that team, and they have a lot of vets on that whole development team.
Yeah, it's a bunch of XKI guys, right? For anybody who doesn't know, and especially the higher level good dudes are all ex Killer Instinct, and you can feel it in terms of just how like it feels to play it, but also like certain mechanics you'll look at it and be like, that's Killer Instinct, right? But they've also, like to Ozzy's point, taken stuff from Dragon Ball. They've taken stuff from Marvel. They've taken stuff from like a ton of other tag fighters, and it all feels like it works really good. The thing for me is like, I don't know how into the weeds we want to get here with Invincible, but I really like all the defensive options that game has. Like, especially in an era where fighting games feel more offensive focused than ever, Invincible gives you a lot of defensive options as a player. And there's this real sense of like back and forth and rock, paper, scissors, even on defense, that like you're not losing just because you're put on defense. You have the chance to do something really cool and seize control of the momentum, and getting to play with that was really cool.
Yeah, and like taking it back to EVO, like just to kind of stick with the topic, like we could talk about Invincible Versus all day, but we're going to have plenty of time to talk about that in the future, because that game is not even out yet, and we're going to have more opportunities to review and preview. But on the case of EVO, like as far as, let's talk about schedule too, like the timing of everything and the way that it was arranged. How'd you guys feel about like the tournament schedules, the final schedules, and just overall event schedules there?
I thought it was good. I really appreciated, and this is the Sunday thing, right? I've really appreciated how games on Sunday were on time. But one of the cooler things that they've done is that they've started to wrap up the smaller games. And this is not a new thing for this year, but they've started to wrap up the smaller games on Saturday. So like Mortal Kombat had its finals on Saturday, and Marvel 2 had its finals on Saturday, and Grand Blue and Uni had their finals on Saturday. And so it was cool because what it does is it essentially makes the finals a 2-day thing. Like if you want to go see pools Or if you want to just, if you're competing, you can go compete. If you want to see pools, you can do that. But if you're also like, man, I want to see like a really cool top 8 and it's the middle of the day, you can just wander into the finals arena. And it won't be as full as it is on Sunday, but it's still very loud, very exciting. And you can see those games get played at a high level with all the, all the flair of like the big stage. And I think the way that they've started to do that, also we got the return to actual top 8s this year, not top 6s, actual top 8s, which makes things amazing because some of the best matches we saw in several games were in games that would not have been there were it as a top 6. I'm thinking of like Guilty Gear, for example. I don't think Tajima versus Varix would have been a top 6 match. I think that would have been it's only possible because of the top 8s, and that was one of the best sets that anybody played. So I think like all these changes that they've made to make the spectator experience kind of better and also just like easier to navigate makes it the show as a whole a lot better because you have more options on any given day, and that makes it more fun.
Like you're gonna run long with if you do top 8s on Sunday, but like at this point, EVO is what it is. You kind of expect it to run long at this point, so why fight it? So just keep doing what you're doing, and your top 8 is going to be a more fun thing to watch every year. So I'm glad they went back to it.
It's really funny that you say that because, like, for once it felt like it ended kind of early at the very end because Mena just showed up ready to complete the mission. Like, that dude.
God, that was just incredible. He speedran it.
My man said, I have dinner reservations. Get me this bracket.
But for the most part, the one thing I kind of wish they didn't do because, like, this is a personal thing for me, but, like, I kind of wish they didn't save some of the brackets for, like, to go along. They had some smaller brackets running up against the finals brackets on Sunday, and I do believe, like, they had a Capcom versus SNK 2 side tournament that I completely missed the finals for because it was at the same time as the Sunday's finals. And there was no way I was going to, like, miss what was happening at the time that was going on. And I kind of just wish that wasn't stacked up the way it is. I know it's a timing thing to a certain extent. I don't know. I would have liked to see those not compete with, like, the biggest games of the show.
Yeah.
I do like, though, that there's that option there. Like, imagine just being an average person there on Final Sunday and being like, wait, there's a top 8 going on over here, but, like, I'm sorry, did you say there's a Capcom versus SNK2 over there? Like, that's like an embarrassment of riches. That's a good problem to have, is to have to decide between one or the other.
Yeah, and I think, TJ, I 100% get you, because I had to make that choice too about like, oh man, I want to see CBS too, but like I got to be in the arena. But I do think it's one of those things where, like, in the same vein that like having the show floor be open on Sunday so we could play casuals during City of the Wolves, right? Like that made it a better experience for us. I think that was one of the best sets you and I have ever had. Like in the same way, maybe you're not into, whatever game is going on in the arena, whatever game it is, right? But you're really into one of the side games, and then you're like, man, I don't have anything to do for a couple hours until like the next top 8 starts. Well, you can go out of the arena, you can go see your side game that you really like, right? And if you don't catch the side games, like, sure, you don't get to see them in person, but all that stuff is recorded and streamed and is available, right? So I think it's great to just give people the opportunity to be like, yes, you do have to make a choice, but having those choices is awesome because, there's certain games that I'm probably not going to sit there for if I have a choice. No disrespect to those games. It's just kind of not what I'm into, right? But I like having the option to go see something else.
Sure. And to speak a little bit to the competitive side of this, like, I didn't ever feel like, I kind of wish Mitch was here too, but like, I didn't ever feel stressed about making it to where I needed to be for my tournaments. I felt like they scheduled the stuff pretty well this year where, like, I had time to make my appointments and get back to the floor and do my games and get back to and go hang out with you guys pretty regularly with breath and time to spare. Like, I never felt like I was rushed or panicked or needed to make something happen in the moment, except for a very special occasion where it was, like, a critical moment that I'll get to in a sec. But, like, for the most part, I felt like tournaments ran on time, tournaments ran smoothly. There were a bit more DQs than I remember being in some previous years, but generally speaking, like, the TOs did a good job this year of keeping things in order. And I do want to bring up that I did compete last year, and I had an experience where, like, one of my brackets was about 30 to 40 minutes late at the end of the day when I was already exhausted, and that was painful. So to have it, like, running so much more smoothly this year, I really appreciated that.
It helps that it's all centralized in the West Hall, and like Will was saying earlier, you don't have to go to another room to catch a panel. It's in the hall. Like, everything is there. So like you don't ever have to go too far. And having that just adds so much convenience and make it so much easier to get from place to place. And I think that's made it an overall better experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think not having to leave the hall to do anything. Like I remember last Evo, we were kind of running around a lot trying to be like, all right, I need to be in the press room to do this, or I need to be, here to do this thing. And here it was like I literally just walk over. And from a scheduling perspective, as someone who did not compete this year but just watched you guys, both times that you and Mitch were playing at the same time, your pools were like
Caddy corner.
at most 2 apart. Yeah, they were cattywampus at worst, right? And I could just walk over, and it took me 2 minutes. I'd be like, oh, TJ's going to play, I'm going to walk over. And I think that was also really good because I know that we're not the only people who do that, right? Like a bunch of people do that. They show up for their friends' pools, or they have to run between pools, and making that centralized and focused and like just really easy to get around. And also, like, I think to the same way, like, because there was so much more room on the floor, more people could stand around a pool and watch people play at that pool, right? Which is awesome because, a couple of years ago, even last year, it could get really crowded around those pools where you couldn't move. And this year I did not have that problem at all. So I think even that was an improvement.
And getting to one of the biggest subjects of contention of last year, let's talk about the finals, like everything about it. The Sunday ticket, the arrangement of the arena. Let's dig in. How do we feel about it being separated to a Sunday ticket once more?
I think it's probably a good thing overall. Like, on the one hand, right, I think you don't have to pay for the Sunday ticket if you don't want it, which is awesome, right? If you're just there for the floor, or you're just there for, a lot of people just come for one day. That's awesome. So they can just come for their one day, see what they want to see, and they can go, right? And they don't have to spend extra money because the cost of, or even if they just want to see the show floor on the third day, right? A lot of the 3-day tickets used to previously factor in the Sunday arena pass, and they were more expensive as a result. So now if you're not interested in the finals, you're just like, I just want to be on the floor all day playing casuals with my boys, you can do that. So I think that's a really good thing. It also, I don't know if this is a result of that, but the arena was definitely less crowded and it was easier to move around in as a result this year. So I think that's probably a bonus too. I know some people are like, extra thing to buy, extra cost. I get that. But I do think, like, for most people, especially if you're one of those people who just wants to come on Sunday and just watch the finals, this is a huge deal for you, right? And I think it lets you pick and choose what you want your experience to be. And I think that's awesome.
I'll be sure to experience it next year for sure.
Yeah, you definitely should.
I don't have a problem with EVO being a modular experience where you get to like choose what days and what tournaments you get into and what like you do. I do think that it's getting prohibitively expensive. I think that's the biggest problem that EVO has right now that I feel I'm aware of, is that the cost of EVO has skyrocketed to the point where, like, speaking personally, like my to be in on Friday and Saturday and I didn't even get a Sunday pass for my floor badge. To be in on Friday and Saturday and be in 3 games costed me around $295. That is a chunk of change to just get onto the floor and play some games.
And I hear that, but like at the same time, how much her operation costs like now? They got to be through the roof. They got to be through the roof compared to what they were like 10 years ago.
I find it very hard to believe that EVO makes money. Like, I imagine.
I don't think it does.
It can't. Like, it can't make money. It has to be, that's why they have all those sponsors, right? They have like AT&T and they have Chipotle and all those other companies that they're willing to help, like, offset some of the costs. But I can't imagine from a logistics standpoint, as somebody who used to work in a theme park and just like from that perspective, right? They're not operating attractions, but the cost of staff, a lot of those people are volunteers, but still a lot of them are not. You have staff, you have moving all that stuff. You have getting all that stuff in the first place, making sure it's all set up. You have backup stuff that you have to have, production. That stuff is really expensive. And I've gotten to see how that works firsthand at not a similar event, but like at a theme park where a lot of stuff, is running at the same time all day. It adds up very quickly. So I understand the cost thing because I do think it is getting very expensive to go. But I also think, like, if you take it in as like, if you think about it, right? If you paid $300, you're paying $100 a day to go all day to a place where you can play as many games as you want. You can watch whatever you want. You are going to be entertained all that time. And if you like do the math out, like if you get there when it opens and leave when it closes, you're paying like $8 an hour, maybe. It's not too bad, honestly. Like I get the, like, when you think about it as like a lump sum, it sounds like a lot, but I still think the value for what you're getting is there.
And I understand where the concern comes from because look at where all of this started. All of this whole thing, this FGC thing, all started because it was a grassroots endeavor. It was a grassroots community built up from the ground up. And this doesn't feel like that anymore by a long stretch. But also look where it is now. Look how it went from like, just doing it in like a small warehouse or in somebody's backyard or whatever to the Las Vegas Convention Center and to having that grand stage. And it's not like, I understand that you want it to be like some people want it to be like in the old days, but like we're not in those days anymore, and it's not really possible to be able to have that kind of reach and still do it on a shoestring budget.
The times they are changing.
With that said, though, like I said, with the whole what you guys have mentioned about like the bring your own console stuff, about like the way the show floor is structured, they're towing that line very well between like making it a big like PlayStation corporate sponsored event and also trying to hang on to as much of that grassroots spirit as possible.
There are things about it that feel very like corporate because obviously Sony owns this now, right? EVO is a Sony product, but like the BYOC stuff, the Artist Alley stuff, like all the cosplay that you see, all the stuff like that still feels very FGC. And the fact that anybody can sit down at a BYOC station and play anybody else, like that's still there. And the fact that people are still organizing their own tournaments is still there. And all of this stuff feels, and the fact that a lot of the TOs compete, which I think is somehow lost on people. Whenever I ran into somebody who's running a bracket, I would ask him like, hey, did you play this weekend? They'd be like, yeah, I competed in X, Y, and Z, right? So I think that spirit of the scene lives on. And I think that, the cost increases are just kind of the price of doing business. Because the other thing is like, there's a prestige associated with EVO, right? Of just being at EVO, of competing at EVO, at winning at EVO, of having your stuff at EVO is prestigious. And the more people want to do that, the bigger the event is, the more it costs. And, I think for me, I don't think we would get to do stuff like see Tokon the way that we did, or see Invincible the way that we did, or, see all the cool things that we got to see on finals day, or see the amount of support from the studios and the publishers that we got to see, unless the event has gotten as big as it is. And that trickles down to other things too, right? I think the fact that the publishers are really starting to support this opens up the door of like, hey, our old game is going to get rollback now. And in a lot of ways, EVO is also supporting that, the back catalogs with the retro games, where Marvel 2, Marvel 3, Street Fighter, Third Strike, right? So like all of it kind of feeds into itself. And again, it's expensive. You're right, 100%. But I think in this case, like EVO being kind of the crown jewel, the thing that everybody comes together for, the thing that everybody agrees is important, whether you're a publisher or a developer or a player or a competitor or just someone who wants to watch and hang out and like play in the arcade with your friends. I don't think there's a price that you can put on that sense of community and that sense of like, this is the one thing, right? That because I can't think of very many other things that have that, and especially nothing with an open bracket.
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, I did still pay for it. I still think it's worth it. I still enjoyed everything I did for it, and I wouldn't take it back. I think for a lot of people, though, they're starting to have that conversation. Like our colleague Joseph Bradford, his kid usually competes, and this year they chose between EVO and something else they wanted because the cost is that high. And I think, to a degree, you guys are right. That's just the nature of the beast. The show has gotten so big and it's gotten so grand. And Las Vegas itself is more expensive these days. I don't know. This is kind of timely, but maybe you guys have seen the news that went out this last week that young people are ruining Vegas by not spending money in it. But,
operating costs out of Vegas are ridiculous. You can ask Twitch about that, because there was the 1 year that they did TwitchCon out of Las Vegas and they never went back. They're like, they went to San Diego and they're like, can we do a 5-year lease? And yeah, because Vegas can be prohibitively expensive.
I think EVO is at some point going to have to have that discussion about, is Vegas where we want to be long term, right? Like, I know obviously there's so much history there, but it didn't start in Las Vegas either, right? Like, it hasn't always been there. So I think at some point, I think they have it locked in for the next few years, but like at some point that is going to have to be a discussion. Like, is it cheaper to have it in Los Angeles? Is it cheaper to have it in San Diego? Is it cheaper to have it in San Francisco? Is it cheaper to have it somewhere else, right? And I don't know, maybe the answer is no, but I think the fact that they're thinking about like stuff like that, and the fact that it's moving earlier next year because they're like, the heat is ridiculous, right? You step outside, it's 106 degrees. So moving it a month earlier, like is shows me at least that they're thinking about like, how do we make this more feasible for people?
What do we think about that? About Evo and the CEO essentially switching places next year?
I think it's interesting.
Florida isn't any cooler.
Yeah, it's that. I think it's also like it's cool functionally because I think CEO like previously I think is a great tournament, but a lot of it was like this is the last one before Evo, right? And so now it becomes like the testing ground after Evo, which is really interesting after like, you know, the scene for whatever game it is shifts, right? And then it's like, okay, now where is it? Whereas right now, I think for a lot of people, you know, Evo, there's typically a lull between events, and this kind of maybe alleviates some of that. So I think it'll be interesting. And I think because there's usually so many announcements at Evo, we're like, hey, we're releasing this character, we're releasing them in 2 weeks. Like we'll actually get to see those characters in competition sooner. It might actually be better for those games.
Yeah, I actually wonder how many dev cycles are going to get shifted a little bit because of this change in schedule, because of how often they love to coincide those announcements with Evo. And in this case, Evo would be like 2-3 weeks after Summer Game Fest next year. So that's something interesting to think about.
Yeah, 3 weeks. I think 3 weeks almost exactly, which is bonkers, right? There's so much stuff that's happening in that part of the year. But again, I do think like, especially if we're talking about their costs of operation, I would imagine it's cheaper to run it in Vegas when it's less hot. Like I imagine that has to factor in somehow. So I think that'll probably help.
Yeah. And then, of course, the other half of that, like, how did we feel about the finals arena as a whole?
I think
Look, we're never going to have the Mandalay Bay again. I mean, maybe never say never, but like maybe never is too harsh a word. But I don't feel like we're going to have that kind of like real sports arena setup again, not ever, for a really long time. And I think for what this is, the Sunday arena setup is the next best thing. I think this presentation looks incredible. I honestly didn't miss a beat with it. Like I loved watching it as a spectator at home. I thought it looked fantastic.
there is a kind of electricity in Mandalay Bay that is not here. Partially because it's just not as big, right? Like there's more people packed into a space that feels smaller, whether or not it is physically smaller. I think they can actually put more people in the new arena, which is part of the reason that they moved. But it's not built the same way. It doesn't have like the, you know, around the thing seating, like around the seating. But I do think the upside of the new standard is that it's actually easier to see. One of the things that I had a problem with in Mandalay Bay was like the screens were quite small in a lot of ways. And if you didn't have a good shot at the actual stage and the big, you know, big thing on the actual stage, you were kind of like looking up or you were kind of looking left, right? Like you had to be like at that very end screen. Now the screens are bigger and they're easier to see and they're all next to each other. So if you're on the left, like TJ, you and I sat on the left on finals day, and I never felt like I was missing anything by focusing on the left screen, right? And it was huge. And the same thing, like if you're on the right, it's there. The only problem I could see would be maybe being in the back, but I think functionally from like yes, there's some electricity gone from like the finals, but like from a viewing experience, if you're there, I think this actually is better just as a viewing experience.
I agree for the most part on the viewing experience because, like, once we got those seats, it felt like we had everything we needed. I always try to find the seat in the arena where it will be the easiest to do my job, because recording a lot of this is part of my job. And so I was pretty happy with what I found there. Acoustics is the worst part of the EVO Sunday experience right now, because that arena is not built for sound. And you can hear it in my videos, just like it's hard to make out anything they're saying, no matter how close you are.
Which is incredible when you consider how they're able to spread everything out in on the other days, where you have 7 games going at once and a panel, and you can all hear them clearly. So the fact that the acoustics are so bad on Sunday is really interesting to hear.
Yeah, I don't know what the answer is, but I do agree with TJ. Like, I think sometimes it's really hard to hear the commentary. Not always. Like, sometimes it's okay, but like it's hard to hear the commentary. It can be hard to hear the games themselves at certain points. And like, I will never forget the first year of Street Fighter 6 was the last year at Mandalay Bay, right? Do you remember the pop when Tokido hit that reversal super?
Yes.
How loud that was and the feeling of being there during that? Like, that you're never going to get at the new place unless they functionally change something about the way they have it set up. Yeah. So that's a bummer. But I do think that like the biggest thing, to TJ's point, is the acoustics. But I do think the actual viewing experience is better. So it's a trade. I'm hoping they figure it out. It was better than it was last year, right? So like every year it feels like they're learning and they're trying to get better at it. But this is only their second shot in that arena, and it was noticeably better than last year was. So I'm hoping that they're going to get there.
And that's the other thing, is that they are learning from this stuff. They are taking notes, if you will, about like what needs to be improved and everything else. So I think it will be, if not noticeably improved, I think it'll be better next year.
I think so yeah, I agree with Will about the viewing being great. I think the cons that I had for the Sunday arena, I already mentioned the acoustics. I hate the sound in that arena. They're also kind of precious about seating in the arena, and I think it's part of that Sunday ticket, but I don't think they needed to be as precious as they were. I feel like the seating in that arena is pretty extensive. They gave us these media seats, and they were very particular about where we could sit. And like the second I saw where they were, I started walking around. And the second I saw how many seats were available in that arena, I started walking around, and I found the spot I found, which is where you see in our videos. That's where I took all those videos from, and I brought the rest of them. I was like, I called out to the rest of the media. I was like, guys, you got to come up here, because I have this now. Let's get it set. But we really didn't even have to fight for that space. It just felt like it was there the whole time. And like even when we left, we came back to it and it was available to get. I understand there's probably some sort of fire marshal thing as far as occupancy and how many people can be in there. But in Mandalay Bay, every time I wanted to get up and stand in a lane and take pictures, as long as I wasn't like blocking a lane or in anyone's way, they would let me do that. Security was kind of precious about like making me sit down this year and not be anywhere where people could walk.
Well, that's the difference between an arena and a convention center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's just my perspective as both an observer and doing my job as a journalist. But I think I would kind of like them to be less precious about restrictions on the Sunday arena. I understand you got to sell that ticket, but like, come on.
I will say, to their credit, I think they adapted in real time. At first, they were like, only so many media seats for this thing. Like, we kind of have to pick and choose who's going to go to what. But like as the day opened up, they very much were like, no, you guys can go and it's okay. So like I think they were, trying something out, trying to figure out like what is this going to look like? We really don't know. We're trying something new. And then as the day went on, you could see them being like, oh no, it's okay. It's actually okay. You guys can go in. So I, credit to them for solving that basically in real time. That's not easy to do. But they were on top of it. And I think, with to TJ's point about, standing up and shooting video and taking photos and all that stuff, I think that'll hopefully also get better. But what I'm really hoping for is, again, like, just year over year improvements. Like maybe we have some screens on the side. Maybe we, so people who are on those sides can see a little bit better, especially the folks in the back who are in the bleachers, right? Like there's so much that could still be improved, even though I do think this was a lot better. But I think that and acoustics are the two big things.
For sure. And yeah, other than those two things, like I do think they're improving. I hope that they figure out something for the sound, because I know we can't go back to the peak that was the sound of the Mandalay Bay, but I would like them to get as close as possible. Like, I don't know. I want to feel that. I want to be able to hear. I not only want to feel that, but I also want to hear what they're saying. And I feel like acoustics is a part of the electricity to me. That's just the way it is. When it comes to a good concert, if I can't understand what the hell is going on, if it's just sound distortion, it takes a little bit away from me. If they can figure out how to clarify that, I don't know how they do it, but it would be great.
Yeah, I
think Rick's going to spend several months trying to figure that out himself.
Yeah, I would imagine. The other problem is, like, for those who've never been to EVO in the new place, like the finals arena is not separate from the old place. It's basically just blocked off by a large curtain. But you can actually just walk through. Like floor to ceiling is the same room. Functionally, it just is kind of like sequestered off. Like it's like imagine like going from like your living room to like, I don't know, like your kitchen in a bathroom that, or not in a bathroom, in an apartment that doesn't really segment the two, right? Where you just kind of like an open floor plan. It's kind of like that. You can tell you stepped into a new space, but they're functionally the same room. And that makes it really hard for the acoustics, right? Because it's not contained. Like you're still spilling out into this other bigger area. So I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if the answer is more speakers. I don't know if the answer is maybe they bring like a facade that they can set up, to kind of like muffle that sound escape. I don't know what it is, but I think they need to do something. And I think they're aware of it too, right? Like to their credit, the EVO team has been very aware of what the issues are, and they've worked really hard to make it better every year. So benefit of the doubt.
$2 million worth of foam for the walls.
There you go. Yeah, just foam up that whole thing and then knock it down with sledgehammers after. That'll do it.
So kind of to tie a ribbon on this whole thing, let's get into just like, what was your favorite part of EVO 2025 for you personally?
Ozzy, you want to go first?
I'm just going to say the layout, just the fact that I felt like I was able to look at the whole floor and go watch a few games and go play some indie games and go to the arcade, go meet the actress of Sonya Blade over at the Mortal Kombat booth. That was awesome. Go watch the panel and not ever have to leave the West Hall. Just having that all centralized, I think made the whole thing so much fun and made the whole thing seem like it gave it both a competitive atmosphere and a convention atmosphere. It's felt like all the best parts of something like PAX or something like the best parts of like something like that. And I love that layout. I hope I don't know how much they can make it bigger, but I hope that they're able to improve on it even more next year. And like I said, like for the past several years, I've been doing EVO where I come in on Thursday and I leave on Saturday because I'm helping write the news stories on Sunday. Well, next year I plan to stay the whole time, and I'm excited to stay the whole time, and I cannot wait to be there all 3 days. And I'm looking forward to seeing how it gets better.
Oh yeah, we get to have Ozzy at the finals with us next year. That'll be awesome.
Nice.
For me, I think it was, I mean, this might sound a little corny, I guess, but like honestly, like it was being there with everybody that like EVO for me is a congregation event. It's one of the few times of the year where a bunch of people I know that I rarely get to see are in the, TJ and I get to see each other maybe twice a year at events. So being able to sit down and play games in person and enjoy the finals in person with everybody and benefiting from, the new layout and the new artist alley and the bigger arcade and the more expansive BYOC stuff, like all the quality of life stuff makes that a better experience for what I come to EVO for. And then at the end, I get to hang out with everybody and watch the finals. And so all those little improvements to me just made it a better experience. And I think, being able to play new games like Tokon and play Invincible Versus again was kind of the icing on the cake. So I guess the whole thing, but I do think that the stuff that they improved was really thoughtful and made the experience better.
I competed in Fatal Fury, City of the Wolves, Grand Blue Fantasy Versus Rising, and Guilty Gear Strive. So, you would think that one of the most important parts of EVO, to me, would be the point at which I got out of the Fatal Fury City of the Wolves pools, because that moment was electric. It was like the thing one of the main missions I had going into EVO was to get out of Fatal Fury pools in its first year of the game, because I've been a lifelong Fatal Fury fan. I've been playing that game since I was 3 years old on the Sega Genesis. And so hitting my shots with T-Zoc and just beating down my enemies and getting that Chipotle card, that was like my HBK first WrestleMania win moment. And I was shaking for a good while afterwards. So much so that at some point I put my PlayStation controller down and walked away without picking it back up.
No, you're that guy.
So Grand Blue Fantasy Versus Rising pools come up, and I sit down and I go into my backpack, and lo and behold, the color drains from my face because I realize that I am not equipped for battle. And I'm like panicking in the moment. I'm freaking out. I'm thinking to myself, what did I do? How did this happen? And I looked at the TO, I was like, I don't have my controller. I need a second. Can you give me 10 minutes? And he's like, he gave me the time, thank goodness. I run across the hall because I think to myself, PlayStation has a booth here. I can fix this. I couldn't find a place where PlayStation sold controllers in EVO for some reason. But I did run into the Nacon booth. And they have like a funky sort of Vitrix BFG level controller. And so I was like, okay, let's do this. And I buy it, I rip that thing out of the box, I head back over to the table, I sit down, and hold that controller up again, Will. One of the first things you might notice is that it has like that, where that cross pad is, it had a circle pad, which...
It looks terrible, you'll have to take our word for it.
It made it very hard, if not impossible, to do
Now, hang on. You didn't mention this part of the story. Wait a minute. Are you about to tell us that you won with a janky ass controller?
Let me get there. So that thing is nearly impossible for me to do consistent Dragon Punch inputs on forward, down, diagonal. And I sit down, and the first guy I come up against is the guy who won Arc Revo Finals for Grand Blue Fantasy this year.
Yeah.
Oh.
So that guy turned me to paste. I had no chance. There was nothing to be done about that. And I'm sitting there with this controller that I'm having to play a circle pad on that I can barely make work. And I'm like looking at Will like, this is a sign. This is over. I'm done. Like this was meant to be this way. I'm just going to do my best and we'll see what happens. And so I stopped trying to do Dragon Punch inputs and I just started focusing on fundamentals. And I wiped out the next 4 people, and I got out of pools.
That's incredible.
And what makes this even more fun is this is literally the controller that TJ used. This controller in my hand.
It sure looks janky.
So
it's actually quite nice. But the funny part is, like, tell the rest of the story, TJ. But yeah, I have the controller.
Well, I was just gonna say thank you to Nacon for being clutch in the moment, because if I hadn't had that controller, I wouldn't have even been able to play. And,
Yes,
So-
and we actually had some good luck after that, though.
There is a punchline to this story, and that is that I didn't run into TJ until Saturday. But if I had run into TJ maybe 24 hours beforehand, I had a Victrix BFG reloaded controller that I got handed a review unit, and I was going to hand it off to TJ going, do you want to review this? If he had come up to me 24 hours before that, he could have had that for his pool.
No, I had that, Ozzy, but I couldn't remember if it was under embargo or not, so I didn't use it.
It was on sale on the show floor.
But I was in a panic. You have to understand.
Yeah, 10 minutes. Give the man a break.
Oh man! Like the first thing they told me, they're like, "Oh yeah, we're selling these on the floor, so like there's no embargo."
Well, that's good to know.
Like it's not on like for those listening, like it's not on sale now. Like it's going to be on sale in September. But like if you were at EVO, they were selling it on the show floor, so it's out there in the wild, sort of, kind of.
But that controller that Will is holding is the one I used to win in the clutch to take out 4 other people in the Grand Prix Fantasy versus Rising pool and get my second Chipotle card of the year.
Yes, and then the funny part is, like, afterwards we're like, man, we got to see if we can find your controller. So we walk over to the Lost and Found, and TJ's like, hey, nobody happened to find a white DualSense, did they? Hand TJ his controller in the Lost and Found box.
Oh no!
Is because my controller has a ridiculously thick cord on it with a little tassel to like wind the cord up at the end. And I just like straight up asked him, you don't happen to know if somebody just like turned in a generic PlayStation 5 white DualSense controller that was sitting on the Fatal Fury table? And they hand it back to me. I'm like, how is this possible? Only at EVO, apparently.
Only at EVO. So this controller that I now have, thank you TJ, this is a get out of your pools at EVO controller, which makes the story even more fun. But yeah, it was one of the most ridiculous things I think I've ever seen. You know, I did that last year. I bought that new fight stick that I brought this year, and that actually got me out of pools. So I just gotta say, maybe every year we just gotta bring a new controller. Maybe that's just the way this is. I don't know.
One.
Look, Major League Baseball players have weirder traditions, so like you might be onto something there.
Yeah, I don't know. It's something magical about getting a new pad at EVO. Does things for you.
My conditions for victory: 1, get new controller. 2, be in losers bracket. Because like this is kind of a recurring theme at this point. I cannot stay in winner's side. I'm just incapable of doing it. But once I get to loser's side, I stop thinking about it and I go on a tear almost every time.
Fighting from underneath has worked for Sonic Fox for a lot of years, so you know it's a good move.
Not in bad company. Not in bad company at all.
And it ended up making for like one of the most ridiculous stories I'll ever have from EVO. Hopefully more to come. But finally, to tie a ribbon on this whole thing, grades. What would you grade EVO 2025?
Give it a B. I was happy with it, but somewhat incomplete because I have not done the EVO final Sunday yet. Get back to me after the Sunday Arena next year.
Okay, fair.
A-. Substantially better than last year, I thought, in several ways. Still really exciting. A few things that I would like them to change, but at this point I think we're largely looking for ways to improve and not fundamental overhauls. So A-.
I can agree with A- because, like I said, there are things that, like, little things that bugged me that could easily be fixed, and I think they will by next year. I achieved a personal best for myself, so that made this a breakout year for me. The content on the floor, Ozzy was saying it felt like there was more news out of EVO 2025 than we may have ever seen out of EVO ever. Like it was,
I don't remember writing that many stories on a Sunday ever.
I think it was, and I thought it was really cool that so many teams that didn't have like a game on Sunday got to come out. Like the Virtual Fighter team got to come out and talk about, you know, next Virtual Fighter and Virtual Fighter 5 Revo World Showcase. Is that what it is? World Stage.
Virtual Fighter 5 Revo World Stage.
But what a title. So they got to talk about that. The Invincible team got to show off Omni-Man. You know, we had trailers from Arxis, we had trailers from Capcom, we had trailers from the Tekken group. We had trailers for basically all the major things. We got some stuff. I think I probably got to see the Wolves thing. I wasn't in the arena, but I thought it was really neat to have like this feeling of like you don't have to be on the main stage and playing right now to have your moment for your, like, this is going to be the thing that's going to be in the FGC for the next several years. I thought that was a really cool thing.
I felt terrible for Capcom having their Viper trailer leaked leaked to start the morning, and I'm like, how does this keep happening to you guys? Like,
They do it
it's
every- it's a
always
tradition.
somebody different. It's always somebody different. It's either PlayStation or it's Steam or it's somebody else that's always leaking their stuff. And it's like, how does this keep happening?
You know, one thing I will say, I think that Capcom is in such a good position that I don't think anybody cares, because when they play the Viper trailer, people got really excited.
I was
got
excited.
I'm going to play Viper when she comes out. I'm switching. I'm no longer going to play Ken. I'm going to play Viper unless I hate her, and then I'll go back to Ken. But like the fact that, you know, people are really excited despite knowing that this stuff is there and knowing what the leak is, and like that's just the FGC, maybe. Like, people are stoked, right? And it's really funny that it keeps happening to Capcom of all people, because like Arxis doesn't have this problem, you know, Bandai doesn't have this problem. Like, it's just Capcom.
Yeah.
I'm going to be excited to see what the Sunday finals look like in the next few years after these games come out, because there's going to be a lot of games fighting for that spot, and you can't put them all there.
Yeah, we were actually talking about that. One of the nights was like, what is the finals going to look like, you know, in a couple of years? And we started game planning like what we thought, you know, the lineups would be. But it's a really interesting time. It's especially an interesting time if you're into tag fighters. Like, tag fighter fans have been kind of in the cold for a few years, aside from DBFC and like, you know, the return of Marvel, but like, you know, on the main stage. But like,
Now
there's
holy
three
shit,
of them.
3 cakes.
Yeah, it's like, oh my god, 3 cakes, right? Like, you got a 2v2 game, a 3v3 game, and a 4v4 game. Man, you could not ask for anything better.
So there you have it. A minus, B. And I think that's pretty good for this year. Like, we all agree, this show continues to improve, and the things that like need improvement seem pretty fixable. And I think we're looking forward to another great EVO in 2026. There's going to be a lot of cool stuff on the table. There's going to be a lot of games that haven't been played before on the table, and it's going to be exciting.
It's just going to be interesting to see how it does in that new late June slot, which I won't lie, it kind of gave me vibes of when that one year that Summer Games Done Quick went to Memorial Day weekend, and it did poorly. And it's just like, I hope that doesn't happen to EVO. I hope it does just as well.
I think it's got to be one of those things where, given that there are so many other EVO events now, you know, we've got EVO France, we've got EVO Japan, we're going to have EVO Singapore in 2027. You know, like, you can't really do one in August anymore, or late July, right? It's kind of, something has to move if you're going to do 4 a year, right? And the EVO award show, like, that has to change. And I think moving it earlier to let people get out of the heat, like, is good for everybody. So I hope it doesn't see a drop off just because of that. I'm very curious to see how it works out, because it also means less time for them to plan for next year, right? Like, they're cutting off essentially a month. That's a lot of time for an event this big. So we'll see, but I'm optimistic, and hopefully what that means is that, you know, we'll get more regular big tournaments that have more great regional players, where games can have their own regional identities. Like, having Soul Calibur at EVO France is going to be amazing. Same thing with Dragon Ball, right? So I don't know. I'm optimistic.
I'm also kind of like, this conversation has made me realize I'm actually a little bit excited to have CEO after EVO. I don't know if you guys know about like the ND or the Monday Night Raw that comes after WrestleMania is always like the most important show of that year, because it's where they set up the new storylines. It's where new rivalries are born. It's where,
you know, Bailey's just relishing that identity right now.
And if anyone is going to lean into that energy, it's Alex Jabali.
Yeah. I think there's some really cool opportunities to honestly really have like a post Evo major, which is not something that we have right now. Like, especially in the way that CEO like brings eyes to the FGC and brings people and brings competition, because it is a major. It does matter. You know, it's one of like really like the big 3 US tournaments. That Combo Breaker and EVO are like really the big ones. So I think it's good for the scene, and I'm hoping that they can do something really cool with it. And like you said, Jabali is the guy to, if we're gonna make that like, you know, kind of a storyline thing, he's the right guy for it.
And that will just about do it. Will, tell the people where to find you.
You can find me on Blue Sky at Edgar Allan Bro. That's where I post all my writing. I just recently did a review for Shacknews of Static Dread, The Lighthouse, which is a really neat game. You should check that out. But otherwise, you can find me, like I said, on Blue Sky.
Ozzy, do you have anything you can talk about that you can share?
You can also find me on Blue Sky, but my event coverage will continue. I'm going to the Pokemon World Championships next week, and I am going to PAX West later this month. So I'll see you all there.
And I'm, of course, at Shacknews. I have a lot of more EVO coverage coming up. I'm also covering QuakeCon this weekend, so be on the lookout for that. And that's everything. Stay tuned, everybody. Be sure to check out Shacknews.com. Head over to our YouTube channels. Check us out on socials, and we will see you next time. Take care. Have a good one.